What's up, hard chargers? And welcome back to another episode of It's Not a Podcast with Al Cohen and the lovely Kyle Miller.
As we know, we've been dealing with the governor's vetoes and gearing up for the House override vote coming up next Monday at 11 a.m. Kyle, what have you heard about that override?
So I had to go and talk last night at our Lorain County chapter meeting. So I was making sure to do my research on some of the specifics of what some of the vetoes were that the legislature is looking at trying to override on the 21st. There are 3,900 political subdivisions in Ohio. Do you know what that means?
It means that each one of those can ask for taxes from you.
3,900 political subdivisions times 4 people at each of them trying to lobby every day and ask for your tax dollars. There's over 15,000 people out there in Ohio at different levels of government. You're talking township trustees, city council, county commission, like you're talking, and some of them have, overlap in multiple districts. That's 15,000 people that are looking to try to figure out how they can work millage and property taxes to try to generate more money for their political subdivision to do what it does.
And I wonder how that happens. And I think it's just a really good reminder that it feels like our government at several levels are really taking a look at all these entities and saying, okay, like, are we really spending that money wisely? Should they be taking that cut? And obviously our answer for most of those questions is no. They shouldn't be taking that cut, and we should be looking at ways that we can reduce those taxes and those taxing entities.
Yeah, my understanding in the research is that, this came about in the 70s, all these different political subdivisions and things that they could do. So it's kind of an antiquated system that a lot of other states have done away with and reduced it down so that you don't have 15,000 people trying to wake up every day and figure out how they can fund their what they got going on. Some of it's legit funding. I mean, obviously, I'm sure a lot of it is, but then there's always those pet projects, and you're going to have some, corruption type stuff that goes on, or some palm padding and stuff. So.
Well, I mean, corruption, but also like accidental fees and like things that people just, again, like haven't like checked in on in a long time. And then it's like, oh, we've been charging this much for this program that is outdated or whatever it is. I mean, that happens, right? This is a huge, weighty, complicated system run by humans. There are going to be mistakes.
We had some teletown halls last night, and man, I had a really big takeaway. I'm curious what your big takeaway was, though. Who did we have on?
So last night we had Josh Williams out of Northwest Ohio, and we had Rep. Dave Thomas out of Northeast Ohio. Rep. Thomas, of course, one of the co-sponsors, lead sponsors of House Bill 335 that looks at property tax reform. And he told us last night that the reason he ran for state rep was because of property taxes. He was the auditor in Ashtabula County, and he saw what was happening, and he was like, we have got to get relief for Ohioans and Ohio property owners. And so he joined us last night. At points, we had like over 2,000 people joining us for the calls. Lots of good questions. I'm trying to remember a few of them. I feel like people were really interested in how we would replace property taxes, because obviously,
which is a good question.
Of course. And it's important to know that property taxes fund the public education system in Ohio. And that's obviously a very important thing. And it needs to be funded. At that point, we have to look at, what are we spending that money on again? Are these dollars really going toward the education of Ohio children, or is it going someplace else? Is it just sitting there, right? So that was one of the interesting things last night.
Troy McIntosh, a couple years ago when House Bill 11, the backpack bill by Marilyn John and Reardon McLean was up there, I did a lot of speaking tours with Center for Christian Virtue, Ohio Christian Education Network, and Troy McIntosh had pointed out, he showed the graph. I have a screenshot on my phone. I'll try to find it. But it was showing how much carryover the public schools of the whole state had. And there was more than 40% of what their annual expenses were carrying over into the next year. And so they're like, why would anybody in the state need more property taxes? Couldn't, the Department of Education reallocate those funds? And for those people who are out there saying like, well, you got to have some carryover for the rainy days and, for the unforeseeables, government agencies typically allow for 20% carryover. Because you got to remember, the government doesn't generate revenue. Like, it doesn't go out and provide a good or a service that earns them money. They take your money and they use that to fund these things. And so if they're not using that money, then it's money that you're not using and they're not using. This is just money just sitting there. I'll tell you the most interesting thing that I heard last night, which has nothing to do with the like what's going on in Ohio or anything, but it was like a really great question from the caller. So a lot of folks on the progressive side, they want to tax wealth, which is to say if you have a house that's worth $1 million, then we want to tax you on that. If you have stocks that are worth $1 million right now, we want to tax you on the worth of those stocks. But the problem is that I don't have $1 million. It's worth $1 million. I don't realize that gain until I sell it. So this guy called in and he said, why do I have to realize right now the value of my property when I haven't sold it? He asked Josh Williams that. Josh Williams, I didn't know this. He said other states have done that, where they said you pay the property tax based on what the property value is when you buy it. And you're locked in at that until you sell it, and then you pay the difference, at the end. So that way, when you're paying that property tax, you're paying it at the end rather than right now when you don't have the money. Because my house could be worth more right now, but if I didn't sell it, I don't have the money. If I don't have the money, how can I service the amount, right? So I thought that was really interesting. Yeah.
And I thought it was also interesting how external things beyond your control affect your property taxes. Like if investors come into your neighborhood and they build those like huge McMansions and drive up, and in Cincinnati at least, those houses, those McMansions that they build sit empty for years.
Yeah.
And so then, all the property owners are getting punished because you built a $900,000 house as an investment, but that no one can afford cheaply.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So like you and your husband are still young enough where you're able to work and go generate more money. Imagine if you're on a fixed income, you didn't do anything different, but the guy down the street or COVID happens or whatever, and now you don't bring in more money, but you have to spend more money because your property's worth more now, even though you haven't sold it yet. And I thought that's a really interesting take. Another teletown hall this week, though, Friday.
That's right. Friday at 12:30 with Representative Adam Matthews down here in Southwest Ohio. So if you're interested in hearing more about the override and especially property taxes, be sure to tune into that. We'll provide the link in the description.
Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, X. You know what? This is why people have to be a part of us, so that you would have my phone number if you came to our events. You would have my phone number if you came to our online chapter meeting. So you know what? I don't feel sorry for people that miss out.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, but there's nothing that's guaranteed. So we have digital petitions that when you click it, all you got to do is sign it, and it will email your elected officials and House leadership as well to say like, hey, we want to see this override happen. So, show up and vote. If you want to tune in Monday for the override, nobody cried, we survived. We're going to be talking about that. But listen, for those of you that are coming, hear me now. For those of you who are listening to us online, or you're coming to our online chapter meetings that we're doing, like we did this last Monday, like we're doing this upcoming Monday, there are going to be people that are going to be at our office and then going over to the State House with us to watch the override happen in person, the same way that there are people that came and watched the budget get passed in person. These are historical things. These are things that get written about in history books, that people cite and reference, in data. And so, if you want to be a part of that stuff, you got to get involved with this. It's an in-person type thing. And so step out from the online world, touch some grass with us. And, next time you could be sitting there with us watching history happen up at the State House and whatnot. So don't forget to get involved with us.
That's right. And if you want to join us for our online chapter meeting, we are coming together again on July 21st. And then after that on August 18th. And I will include those links in the description too.
Awesome. Keep charging hard chargers.
That's right. That's right.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it.